أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق وأعز المرسلين، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد سيما بقية الله في الأراضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء. قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. مؤمنين مؤمنات, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your efforts, all of our efforts, as we gather to have majalis al-dhikr, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These majalis are beloved or loved by the Prophet and his family, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim ajma'in, through which we remember their words, the words of God and the words of the Messenger and his family, and through which we purify. It is through their kindness and love that they want what's best for us. It is not benefiting them, rather benefiting us, that we sit and remember them and their words. The discussion that I would like to have in the next couple of weeks, inshallah, as we approach the month of Ramadan, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the opportunity to live until then and fast the month of Ramadan, and grant us the wisdom to understand the secrets of fasting beyond the physical fasting or abstaining from food and drink, and also to grant us the blessings in the month of Ramadan, as He promises. It is a month of very, very special blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even according to the famous sermon that I would highlight a few lines from this sermon today or tonight, and inshallah a few more lines from the sermon next week, the sermon known as Al-Khutbah Sha'baniyya, which is delivered by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, narrated by Imam Ali alayhi salam, and it was delivered in the month of Sha'ban, but it was about the month of Ramadan, and therefore it is known as Sha'baniyya. However, it refers to, or it speaks of, the coming of Shahr Ramadan, or the holy month of Ramadan. In that sermon, in fact, what I was mentioning, one of the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that the gates of paradise is open, or are open, and the shayateen, the devils, are in chains. Now, whether that means they are completely not capable or disabled, or they are simply, it's heavier for them to do anything, Allahu A'lam. Nonetheless, we know that they're less effective, and we are kind of left to our nafs, if you want, which is the greater enemy. أعدى عدوك نفسك التي بين جنبيك. In the hadith, we are told that our greatest enemy is nafs, our own nafs, and not the shaitan. We blame everything on shaitan. Typically what happens, anything that happens, anything that somebody does wrong, lana on the shaitan, and that's it, it's past. And we do not want to, and it's a nice way of actually passing the buck, nice way of diverting the blame from ourselves to shaitan. Okay. Now we know shaitan is our enemy for sure. But if we do not purify and our nafs is stuck in an-nafsul ammara, in the level of the nafs that's constantly commanding us and dragging us towards our desires and sinful acts, if we're stuck in that realm, therefore we don't need shaitan. In fact, shaitan focuses on those who are purifying or who have purified. His work is more focused on them. He has his army and they work very hard. And according to the hadith, if a believing person, in fact, a knowledgeable person, alim, who is practicing, not any alim, one who is putting his knowledge into practice, when he dies, a huge army of shayateen become jobless, basically. They lose their job and they start looking for another, they seek other fields to be hired, by their leader, by Iblis, alayhi la'anullah. So we know that our nafs is, or we should know and realize that our nafs is a greater enemy than shaitan, and therefore we're not safe if shaitan is not around. And whether or not it was part of God's plan, that's another discussion. Why is shaitan there? Why was he given the permission? And so on. That's another discussion. What we know is that besides shaitan, we have an enemy, which is our nafs. And our nafs, if we have not purified, this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly tells us that in general, insan is in loss. This is a very clear, open statement. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Insan by nature is in loss. What kind of insan? All insan who has not purified. Because the other ayah, Quran يفسر بعضه بعضا. Quran explains itself. In other ayat we are told about tazkiyah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مِنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Khayba or khaba here is referring to one who is in loss, khusr. Khaba or khasira, similar, although there are differences. Nonetheless, we're focusing here on a simple explanation by the Quran of another ayah in the Quran. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ is a very general statement to say every human is in loss. No, because the other ayah explains, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. The one who's purifying is winner, not loser. So we have the loser is who then? وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. One who does not purify, one who betrays himself is the loser. In other words, if we do not do tazkiyah, if we do not ascend with our nafs or help ourselves ascend from being in the realm of nafsul ammara that's stuck in its own desires, whims and desires and worldly pleasures, and we don't take it, drag it up out of there to bring it into the realm of at least an-nafsul lawwama. Quran describes another level of nafs. It's the same nafs. It ascended. Through purification, it went out of being ammara to being lawwama. Lawwama meaning what? Lawwama is a level where at least one who does slip and commits some sins or makes a mistake here and there feels bad about it. He or she would blame themselves for it. Lawm is where we blame ourselves, not always point the finger at shaitan, Iblis, la'natullah alayh. No, we realize that. Lawwama talum, who? Nafsuha. Nafs al-lawwama, it's described as lawwama because it blames itself. We blame ourselves. Zalamtu, what? Nafsi. In Dua Kumil we're told, I oppressed myself. I allowed myself. In fact, even shaitan would not have been able to do anything if I didn't allow him. Quran is very clear on that. He says it on the Day of Judgment. When we try to blame him, the same thing that we're doing here, we try to do over there. But then he says, I had no authority over you. I invited you and you responded, or you answered my call. Today, one of the ayat that our dear brother Reza translated beautifully, the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes how shaitan, being our enemy, we take him and his army as friends. أَفَتَتَّخِذُونَهُ وَذُرِّيَّتَهُ أَوْلِيَاءَ مِن دُونِي وَهُمْ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ. You're considering him and his family, his progeny, his children, his army, you're considering them your friends besides me. God is talking to us. Besides God, we're looking at Iblis, listening to Iblis. Who did that? We did that. If we didn't allow him, he couldn't do anything. Inna awliya'i laysa laka alayhim min sultan. My friends, you have no authority over. Those who consider God their friend, Iblis can't do anything. But those who consider Iblis their friend, then he can control them. He can use and abuse them. But if we do not allow him, it doesn't happen. So we come back to tazkiyah, purification of the nafs. The month of Ramadan is the month of tazkiyah. And that's what we need to understand. Earlier in Jum'ah, I mentioned to mu'minin and mu'minat, those who want to take full benefits of the month of Ramadan, let us do a 40-day, not 30-day. 30 days is the wajib, yeah? And I said, I'm not suggesting that you fast 40 days. If you can, by all means, it's great. The Prophet ﷺ emphasized on joining the 2 months together. At least the last day of the month of Sha'ban, fasted with the month of Ramadan. Nonetheless, as many days as we can in the month of Sha'ban. And we read in the Salawat al-Sha'baniyah, الذي كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم يدأب في صيامه وقيامه في لياليه وأيامه. This is the month of Sha'ban, the month in which Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم used to strive and work hard in fasting in this month, Sha'ban, and also standing for prayers in the night, specifically layalihi referring to prayers and ayyamihi referring to the fasting part. Therefore, it is more recommended and more rewarding if we join them. But if you cannot do the fasting, if somebody finds it difficult to fast and they barely can make it throughout the month of Ramadan, then at least start the journey of purification before the month of Ramadan. Start a 10-day before the month of Ramadan, and that would be a 40 days. Because a 40-day is what we are told in the hadith, in many hadith in fact. Number 40 is a very significant number. We have many ayat and riwayat about the significance of 40. An example of that is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave and this is very similar to what we're just speaking about. 30 and we add 10, yes? In the ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks of the appointed time with Musa ala nabina wa alayhi salam, he says, وَوَعَدْنَا مُوسَى 30 لَيْلَةً. We made an appointment with him 30 nights. But then what does the next part of the ayah say? وَأَتْمَمْنَاهَا بِعَشْرٍ. We completed it with another 10. So the completion was 40. It wasn't complete with 30, was it? If we look at the ayah, was it complete with 30 or was it complete when it became 40? It is complete when it became 40. وَأَتْمَمْنَاهَا بِعَشْرٍ. Therefore, it's another tam. فَتَمَّ مِيقَاتُ رَبِّهِ 40 لَيْلَةً. Therefore, the appointment with his Lord was completed 40 nights. So I would suggest and recommend mu'mineen and mu'minat start the journey of tazkiyah, purification, before the month of Ramadan. Give another 10 days before count the days to the month of Ramadan and start your journey of purification, self-assessment and purification. How do we do that? I want to, inshallah, between tonight and next week, we'll try and address some of the techniques or the methods through which we can do tazkiyatun nafs. We can improve and purify and ascend with ourselves, our souls, from the lowest level of al-ammara and nafsul ammara to, inshallah, one day reach an-nafsul mutma'innah, the highest level being the nafs that God is pleased with it and it is pleased with God. The mutual pleasure with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya ayyatuha an-nafsul mutma'innah irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyya. In the end of Surah Al-Fajr, return to your Lord in a state of mutual pleasure with your Lord. One who reaches a state or a stage in their life that they cannot question all what they see from God, they're pleased with, and therefore He is pleased with everything from them. It works to both ways. Whatever happens, sometimes some calamities happen, some difficulties we go through in life. One who reaches that level of nafsul mutma'innah, they reach a stage or a state where they are pleased with whatever God brings their way. Whatever it is. If it's difficulty, it's difficult. If it's ease, it's ease. If it's wealth, it's wealth. If it's health, it's health. If it's illness and poverty, it is. So be it. Because God allowed it, they're pleased with it. In fact, in the hadith we are told, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala, he visited Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, Ridwanullah ta'ala alayhi, this great companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who lived, and the Prophet did tell him that, Ya Jabir, you will live until you meet one of my grandchildren who has my name. The Imam was named Muhammad. He is the son of Imam Ali Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. However, his title was Al-Baqir, because the Prophet did tell Jabir that he will be one who would dissect and open gates and cities of knowledge from obviously what they learned from their grandfather Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Innahu yabqur al-ilma baqra. Therefore he is referred to as Baqir, al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. He visited Jabir when he was unwell one day, older, unwell. Therefore he came to visit him, a companion, one of the great pure companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Therefore, when he visited him, he asked him, how are you? How is your state? Then he says, Yabna Rasulullah, O son of the Prophet of God, I have reached a stage in my life where I prefer old age over youth. I prefer poverty over wealth. Or perhaps this was not. I prefer old age over youth. I prefer illness over health. And I prefer death over life. Now why? Because the connection between the three is that typically people are closer to God during in those circumstances. Obviously with death we return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it should be the ultimate goal of a lover, a believer, one who loves God and wants to return to God. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ هَادُوا إِن كُنتُمْ If you claim that you are friends of God, you love God, then you should wish for death. فَتَمَنَّوُا الْمَوْتَ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. If you're truthful about your relationship with God, you should not be afraid of death, rather you should wish for the return to your beloved. So these are things that he had reached, that typically when we're older, we remember God more than when we are younger, young, absent-minded, and following their desires and so on. And typically when one is unwell, when one is sick, they remember God more. Desperate times, that's when most people turn to God, and when He relieves them, then they forget, as if they never called. مَرَّ كَأَن لَّمْ يَدْعُنَا إِلَىٰ ضُرٍّ مَسَّهُ. He walks away as if he never called upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a typical insan who has not purified, insan who is in khusr, in loss. So the Imam says to him, this is good. هذا حسن. So it's okay, it's good. What you're saying is beautiful, because ultimately you're looking at what gets you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, however, we Ahlul Bayt are different. We prefer whatever our Lord, our God, the Creator prefers for us. And this is what the poet puts it beautifully. In Farsi he says, Yeki dardo, yeki darman pasandad, yeki vaslo, یکی هجران پسندد من از درمان و درد و وصل و هجران پسندم آنچه را جانان پسندد. I prefer from all the different circumstances. Somebody prefers to be well, somebody prefers to be healthy, somebody prefers, unwell or sick, or somebody prefers wealth, whatever. He says, out of all circumstances, I prefer whatever my beloved prefers. My Lord, my Creator, my beloved. So the Imam tells him, we prefer whatever God prefers for us. This is the state of Radam biqada'ik, completely pleased with whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent their way. This is in fact the highest level. Inshallah, we should aim to be there. That should be the aim of every believer, because ultimately this life is going to be over sooner or later. Some young, some old. The poet, he says, death is like khabta ashwa, it's like a camel gone crazy. You know, when they try and stab the camel, if it escapes, it goes crazy. They call it in Arabic ashwa. So it runs. Now it doesn't think of who is it going to hit. And so the poet in Jahiliyyah, or at that earlier times, he was describing death like what he's familiar with. So imagine a car gone out of control, if you don't want to look at the camel being out of control. A car going out of control and going in an area that there are people walking around. The car out of control, completely out of control, going left and right. It hits some, it misses some. Yeah? So it's a hit and miss, as they say. And whoever it hits, he says the death is like that. Whoever it hits, it takes him. Whoever it misses, he lives. And so it doesn't recognize here what the analogy here is that the fact that the camel in that state, or car gone, out of control, or whatever it may be, it doesn't recognize young, old, male, female, nationality. It doesn't recognize anything. Time comes, that's what it is. That's how. So we are leaving sooner or later. And when we do leave, what would matter and what we should be concerned about is, where are we in the hereafter? I've said it many times, mu'mineen and mu'minat. In this world, everybody aspires to be in a better status. Nobody wants to be poor. Nobody wants to be basically without any kind of social status, respect and so on. Everybody aspires to be in a better, every sane person at least. Every sane person aspires to be in a higher status. You go to a job and you start, working at a job. Any sane person wants to get promoted. They don't want to stay where they are. Why is it when it comes to the hereafter we're okay with anything? This is really a big contradiction on the part of a believer who realizes that the hereafter is the real life. It's the real life. Realizes that compared to this world, hereafter is eternity. This world is short-lived. So why are we so concerned and focused here and neglectful of the hereafter? Again, coming to tazkiyah, purification of the nafs. The first thing is what I've just discussed so far. The first thing in the journey of tazkiyah is the recognition of the significance of tazkiyah. When you read, for instance, the Risalat al-Huquq from Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, the treatise of rights, when he speaks of rights of different things, he often speaks of what you should know about the rights of different entities or individuals. For instance, or about their status. When he speaks about the rights of your mother, for example, he says the rights of your mother is that you should know. So he's not speaking of something you should do here. It's about what you should know. Because what you know would reflect itself in how you behave. You know, certain beliefs, we know, knowledge, then emotions, and then actions. We have emotions and interactions between our knowledge and our feelings about it. Eventually it leads into action. Therefore, if you know the status of your mother, the Imam is saying that you know that she fed you from where nobody feeds nobody. She carried you where nobody carries nobody. She cared for you. She sacrificed her food that you are fed. She sacrificed her sleep that you are comfortable, to make sure that you're comfortable. That is her. The right here he's saying is to know this. Because what happens if you know this? Naturally, by knowing this, you have certain emotions, love and appreciation towards your mother. Therefore, you would be nice, kind, willing to sacrifice, and so on. Here, the first thing regarding the journey of tazkiyah is to realize how important it is. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا, and the opposite. It's either way. You're either doing tazkiyah or you're not doing tazkiyah. Is there a third path? Simple question. If I'm not doing tazkiyah, can I say, okay, now I'm not doing the wrong thing, so I'm not on the wrong path. I didn't do tazkiyah, but I'm not doing anything bad. I'm not trying to do something, go in the wrong way, basically become worse. No, the Quran says, if you're not doing tazkiyah, you're in loss. This is literally what Imam Ali alayhi salam explains. He says, if you do not increase, you are decreasing. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ فِي زِيَادَةٍ فَهُوَ فِي نُقْصَانٍ. If you're not increasing, you're decreasing. How so? Because you had an opportunity to increase, and you will be asked on the Day of Judgment about every day that you went through in life, and what did you do with it? How did you use that day? Did you utilize it to get closer to God, to do something good for yourself? If not, your own regret will burn you. Our own regret, وَالْعَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, we seek refuge to God from such a state. Our own regrets will burn us. Therefore, again, simple term, if we are not doing tazkiyah, we are losers. Either you're doing it or you're not doing it. There's no third path. I cannot say, I'm okay where I am. I'm not doing something bad. I'm not trying to become better. No. By not trying to become better, you are doing something bad. You are losing. And this is why, again, the ayah does not give us a third option. This is the significance of tazkiyah. We have no choice but to do tazkiyah. Purify and better ourselves. And every one of us should ask ourselves, where are the areas I need to improve in, therefore I start improving. We cannot neglect it. So that will bring me to the next one, and inshallah I'll finish with this one. A few minutes over over the schedule. The next one, after recognizing how important it is to do self-assessment. Some level of muhasabah, self-assessment. حاسبوا قبل أن تحاسبوا. Before the day of reckoning, before the day of judgment, before we are asked and we have to answer, ask yourself, There will come a day that we will be asked about everything. So ask yourself before. Just like how we prepare for perhaps job interviews, just like how we prepare for exams. We do trial tests, don't we? If you have to do, some sort of an exam, multiple choice exam, whatever it may be, even driving, the test for driving, driver's knowledge test or something, knowledge test, yeah? What do? We test ourselves first, so that when we sit at the real test, we don't fail the test, yeah? So similarly, we need to prepare ourselves. We know what we will be asked about. Where do we know from? There is the Quran, Hadith. We know the questions. Therefore, prepare yourself, ask yourself about the questions that you will be asked about. There is a very famous hadith about the things that we will be asked about, although you could basically, from those main categories, you could derive so many small branches. But the main categories, he says, nobody can pass over the Sirat unless they're asked about 4 things. One, we mentioned earlier, an umurihi, your life, days of your life. Units of measurement of our life, seconds if you want. Every second that goes is never going to come back. Every day that goes is never going to come back. A day that comes, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says, every day calls to the people, an entity of the day. Says, I am your companion for this day, and you will never see me after today until the day of judgment. Make sure I witness for you and not against you. Days will witness. Places, the land that we walk on, will witness. Time and place are entities that will also witness. Our body, we think that bodies cannot speak. Yeah, our body witnesses. وَتَشْهَدُ أَرْجُلُهُمْ. Yeah, the hands speak, the feet witness or give testimony and verify or confirm what other limbs are saying. So these are all going to witness. Time of our life or days of our life is going to be, we will be asked about, it is going to witness for or against us. Therefore, ask yourself, and this is why muhasabah is a daily process. If we start this 40 days of muhasabah, it'll become a habit. They say, to develop a habit, you need 40 days. It'll become a good habit. Start 40 days, starting 10 days before the month of Ramadan. At night, ask yourself these questions. One simple question. What did you do? Muhasabah. What did you do today? Was it a beneficial day? Did you get closer to God? Did you get further from God? Because this is a day that had passed. And mind you, if you didn't get closer, you got what? Say it. If you didn't get closer, you have gone further. That's the reality. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ فِي زِيَادَةٍ فَهُوَ فِي نُقْصَانٍ. There's no third option. Ask yourself, muhasab. عَنْ عُمُرِهِ شَبَابِهِ. Most importantly, the youth. You will be asked about your time twice, or your energy if you want. All the energy that God has granted the youth, what did you do with it? On the one hand, you have your time. On the other hand, you have so much potential. Time is potential. Other potential within the youth, that they have so much energy, what did you do with it? Did you use it positively, or God forbid, did you use it negatively? وعن شبابه فيما أبلاه. ماله, money. Today, how did I earn my wealth? How did I spend it? Two questions about wealth. مما اكتسبه وفيما أنفقه. Where did you get it? How did you spend it? About the wealth. And the last one, about who your leader is and how you treated your leader. If your leader is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, if your leader is the Imams of Ahlul Bayt salawatullah wa salamu alayhim ajma'in after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, were we dutiful and obedient to our leaders? Did we recognize them and their authority and therefore obey the Prophet, obey the ulil amr, the real ulil amr? Ati'u Allah, as Quran tells us, Ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul wa ulil amri minkum. Who is ulil amr for us today? Did we obey our ulil amr, or did we ignore their orders and their teachings? This is the last one. And without those, and this should be a daily muhasabah, we cannot pass over the salat wal ayadu billah. We seek refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from a state of absent-mindedness and ghafla. We ask Him to grant us awakening and wake us up from our slumber of ignorance and neglect into the light of knowledge and implementation. We ask Him to make us amongst those who listen to what's said and follow what's best. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Muhammad wa alihi al-tayyibin al-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If I can ask mu'mineen and mu'minat to remember all the marhumeen, those who passed away from mu'mineen and mu'minat from our gathering, especially those who passed away recently, with the recitation of Al-Fatiha ma'a as-salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala